Hello, readers of Every Word, and welcome to Every Word 365. I'm your host, Christina Madsen, and today we're reading Deuteronomy 31 through 34 as we wrap up the Pentateuch, or the Torah. Those are the first 5 books of the Bible, and I'm including a link about the Pentateuch from Got Questions. Let's take a moment to look back at the life of Moses and what we can learn from him. Again, this is a link from Got Questions that I just love about all the things that we can learn from the life of Moses. It has a great Cliff Notes summary of Moses and everything the Bible shares about him, but I want to draw your attention to one part of it. Moses needed time to grow and mature and learn to be meek and humble before God. And this brings us to the next chapter in Moses' life, his 40 years in the land of Midian. During this time, Moses learned the simple life of a shepherd, a husband, and a father. God took an impulsive and hot-tempered young man and began the process of molding and shaping him into the perfect instrument for God to use. What can we learn from this time in his life? If the first lesson is to wait on God's timing, the second lesson is to not be idle while we wait on God's timing. While the Bible doesn't spend a lot of time on the details of this part of Moses' life, it's not as if Moses were sitting idly by waiting for God's call. He spent the better part of 40 years learning the ins and outs of being a shepherd and supporting and raising a family. These are not trivial things. While we might long for the mountaintop experiences with God, 99% of our lives are lived in the valley, doing the mundane, day-to-day things that make up a life. We need to be living for God in the valley before He will enlist us into the battle. Such good and practical advice for all of us, isn't it? What is your biggest takeaway from Moses? What have you learned from him? I know, especially for moms and dads out there, sometimes picking up the kids and taking them and going to work and doing the same thing every day can feel a little monotonous. So a great lesson and reminder for us to really glorify God in all that we do. Then before Moses dies, there's the Song of Moses. Oh, how I wish there would have been a recording device back then. How cool to have been able to hear the melody that went with the words. And of course, I have a link for more from Got Questions on the Song of Moses. And once again, the end of the song points to who? You guessed it, Jesus. The last words of the Song of Moses are a promise that God will make atonement for his land and people. That's Deuteronomy 32:43. This is a significant promise because the atonement for God's people is none other than the sacrifice of God's own Son, Jesus Christ. So yes, I know I'm a theatrical person, but I get a little excited and I think about the song and the end of the song with that amazing eternal promise. By the way, it is generally assumed that Joshua, although some say Ezra, wrote Deuteronomy 34 since it is about the death of Moses. Therefore, it is assumed Moses could not have written it. And I have a link to Got Questions about that as well. And did you read the insight for today? Sadly, Moses, deliverer of his people, never set foot in the promised land, as we have talked about. Or did he? If you're not familiar with the transfiguration, throw that word out in Sunday school sometime if you want to sound biblically well-versed, then check out this link about the transfiguration from Got Questions. That is something that is coming in the New Testament, but it's a theory and I find it so fascinating. Maybe Moses did make it to the promised land after all. I'm also including the Bible Project overview video. Again, you may want to watch these before you start a new book. I send them at the end, and it does a great job of summarizing the whole entire book and what the intent is. With that, congrats on finishing another book. After that, it'll be March, and we'll be reading Joshua. We start with 1 through 5. Happy reading!